Welcome, everyone. I said I'll save the introduction about Angela, and then I'm going on about her, and I'm tearing up because I'm so grateful for her. I said, and then so I'm going to repeat for those of you joining live that she was an early adopter of the prodependence lens, for supporting partners, and was really brave and was out there sharing it with the therapeutic community, and has been hosting the drop-in group for partners on Sunday nights for more than 7 years. That's a mixed gender drop-in group for betrayed partners. She facilitates the betrayed partner work group. She's just been an advocate for healing for people, and I'm so grateful. Every time I invite her to there's a standing invitation. She can do a webinar whenever, but I had a need for this time frame, and I was like, hey, and she came up with a really great topic, and she'll tell you more about that. But I'm just honored to have Angela in yet another capacity here on a webinar. So her title today is The Shocking Truth About Self-Betrayal. And this is part one and part two will be later in the month. We'll tell you more about that too. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. And it has been such an honor for the last 7 years to work alongside you, Tammy, and with Seeking Integrity. And we are such a good fit because we value many of the same things and the approaches that we take in treating both the addicts and the betrayed partners and even family members from time to time. So, yeah, it's been a wonderful fit, and I think a lot of people have benefited because it. I wanted to do this webinar today because, and you'll probably pick up on some of this in my face, in my voice, in some of the slides. This is something that if I were to die tomorrow, I would want my kids to know this information, right? Like this is something that I am putting out there almost as a legacy. This information I think is really important for us, and I tend to be the type of person, which is why I really lean into prodependence and why I took it and ran with it. I tend to be the person where when I'm looking at systems and I'm looking at approaches to treatment, I find patterns of things that have great value, but then also there's a little tweak to it that would make it so much better or so much more helpful or less risk of harm. And that's really what I'm going to be doing today with this conversation on self-betrayal. Because do I think it's possible to self-betray? I'm on the fence on this. So we're going to talk about it. I do think that there are times that we really need to challenge ourselves to find the courage to step in and do something that we need to do for ourselves. But to use the word betrayal, I don't know, but we'll explore it today and then you get to decide for yourself. Um, Another thing that is unique about the work that I do with people, which you will also pick up on this, is that part of my training and part of my background is in philosophy, actually. I was a philosopher before I became a therapist. And so the work that I do leans really heavily into how do we make sense of the world? How do we make sense of life? What is the meaning of life? Who am I? Right. So very deep meaning. And you'll see that in all of my webinars, things are coming from a really deep meaning approach. And that's coming from my background in philosophy. So I wanted everybody to understand when you see my webinars, it's a little different. And that's why there's just a slightly different approach that most therapists are not trained in philosophy. So that is where that's coming from. Very existential crisis focused because when you find out that there's been a betrayal, or you look back and you are examining the things that you've done in life that you have regret or guilt over, um, you often will go through this like an identity crisis where you're going, I never thought I was capable of that, or I never thought my life could turn out this way. So whether you're the person who betrayed or the one who was betraying that person, I think today's topic is going to be relevant. It is all of my slides, all of my wording is really directed more towards the betrayed partner. But if you will notice, all of this is very applicable to somebody who's waking up and going, I cannot believe I did the things that I did. Okay, so that's that. So let me share my screen. Pull up my slides here for y'all. Stop Zoom. Okay, share. And
Good.
then
I
I'll
was gonna
get,
say I knew I made you co-host. I just want to make sure. Good. Okay.
and it takes me a second to get it all. Okay. All right. Everybody can see?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, shocking truth about self-betrayal. First, I would like everybody to pause and ask yourself, what is something I used to believe as a child that I no longer believe as an adult? It could be something about Santa Claus. It could be something about is it possible to land on the moon? Is space travel possible? That's on my mind because of all the Artemis stuff right now. And I grew up in Florida and I saw these space shuttles going off. So there are lots of things that as a child are very real and very true for us as a child, right? We get presents from Santa. That makes it real for us. But then as we get older, we're the Santa and we're giving presents to kids. Santa isn't what it used to be, right? So as we grow, as we mature, as we go through life and we have different experiences, it's important that we update our beliefs. Another example is a Hungarian doctor. I think you pronounce his last name Weiss. He is recognized as the savior of mothers because he determined that hand washing dramatically reduces mortality rates. This was in 1847, y'all. This isn't like 500 years ago. Um, this is like 100 years after the United States was developed, right? Like this is not that long ago. At that point, bacteria and germs had not yet been discovered. And when Semmelweis started telling all of these other medical doctors, we need to be washing our hands, we need to be washing our hands, many of those medical doctors took it as offensive that they weren't being good doctors. And so they actually refused to wash their hands, and then mortality rates rose. So there's this big experience that people go through when new information is coming out, and we have to challenge our assumptions about how the world works, about how life works, about who we are. And as everybody now knows, bacteria and germs, these are real and it is important and it is life-saving if we can let that new information in and adjust course, change our actions, change our behaviors with that new information. But we have to be willing to update our beliefs and our understandings in order to take different actions. And that's a really important piece of what I'm hoping to drive home with this webinar today. So here's the setup. Um, you're the betrayed partner. Things are hard, but so this, even before finding out about the infidelity, things were hard, but you know what? Relationships are hard for everyone, aren't they? All relationships are hard. All relationships take a lot of work. Then you discover the infidelity and shock sets in. Um, you are lost and confused, and maybe all of a sudden some things are starting to surface that, wait, does that mean that this was happening? And wait, now I remember this happening. And is that part of it? And so you're starting to ask all these questions. But even as you're asking your questions, and even if your partner is being honest and answering your questions, um, it's still not making sense. Like, how could this happen? There's still an element of shock. Um, for many betrayed partners, as you're asking questions, the person who cheated really wants to minimize what happened. They want to try to dodge as much of the impact as possible. And so they're likely to tell you when you're asking, why did this happen? How could you do this? They're usually going to say things like, well, the relationship really wasn't all that great. And we've been going through a lot. And, you've really gained weight and you've just let yourself go. And you give all your attention to the kids, right? And so now the partner is denying, blaming, lying, and now the partner is making themselves out to be the victim, right? Like life was so hard and you just really neglected me, right? And unfortunately, what is still happening, I'm hearing so many stories from couples, is that they go to a couples therapist hoping to heal the relationship, And that couples therapist is going to suggest that there's some equal responsibility here. And with equal responsibility is an equal need for repair. You both need repair, which can be true in so many situations. I'm not negating that. But when you're dealing in the aftermath of infidelity, that is not true. The person who cheated is the only person responsible for those choices and those behaviors. But the therapist, this couple's therapist, encourages you to consider what's your part in the problem. And so you start saying, I ignored the signs, I didn't set boundaries, I believed the lies, I fell for the tricks, I let myself go, I wasn't good enough, I was too much. I did neglect the relationship. I should have this, I shouldn't have that. And you hear all of these thoughts that you're having, and you're going, who is the common denominator? I did all of these things. But while you're doing that, your inner child is listening to you say, I'm the problem. I betrayed myself, and my pain is my fault. I let this happen, right? Your inner child is hearing all of that. So then what happens is life is hard. You start thinking life is hard and I can't trust anyone. I'm going to have to fight to protect myself. I'll probably fail at this, and then I'm going to live a life of mistreatment. I'm not good enough, not smart enough. I'm not attractive enough. I don't deserve anything better, and I can't expect happiness. I just need to find a way to stay quiet and focus on everyone else's wants. Because what else is left? Especially when you realize you can't control the person who cheated. But when we take this path, the reason why we're doing that is because we're trying to regain some control. If we know that we can't control the person who cheated, then maybe if we carry some of the blame, then that can give us something to focus on, to work on, so that it doesn't happen again in the future. But we're telling our inner child to not let something like this happen, as if that inner child could ever possibly keep something like this from happening. We're just trying to protect ourselves, but that means we're telling ourselves, just find a way to stay quiet and focus on everyone else's wants. So let's talk about the trolley problem. You've probably heard this if you've ever taken a philosophy class or if you've ever had a conversation around philosophy. There's this idea that a trolley is coming down the tracks. If you do nothing, that trolley is going to hit 5 people and all 5 of them will die. But if you push the lever, it will turn the trolley onto the other track and only one person will die. And the question for you is, which is the right thing to do? Notice that as the person trying to decide which action to take, that person is thinking 1 life versus 5 lives. Well, all lives are really important, and how could I decide? And the value that's driving this person's decision making is it's important to save lives, but is it more important to save one individual's life who's maybe a really important person or a child versus 5 people who maybe aren't as influential, or maybe they're all elderly, or whatever these different scenarios that these people could be. Now you're starting to see that our values drive a lot of our decision making. How do we know what is a good thing to do and how to carry out that good thing and which is better? So values can now become in conflict with each other. Okay. So one good value and another good value, you may not be able to, in the same moment, address both values, even though both values are good and both values are important. So if you're looking at this in terms of betrayal and how to respond to the betrayal, you may be thinking I could focus all of my energies on parenting, Or I could drive myself to exhaustion while confronting my defensive partner about my suspicions. And especially if you've started to bring it up and all they did was lie to you or blame you or attack you or give you the cold treatment, right? And then so later on, you start thinking, I'm really betraying myself by not confronting this. But what you're doing is you're trying to decide which is more important, to focus on the little energy that I have on my parenting and my elderly parents and my teenager who's about to graduate and all of these things that are value driven, things that are really important to us, versus another thing that's really important to us, which is standing up for ourselves and not letting something happen that shouldn't be happening. But if you can't do them both at the same time, how do you win? Right? And then we go into this spiral and we think, I'm betraying myself. I'm betraying myself because I'm not doing it all. So while preparing for this webinar, I did some research on lots of different programs, articles, other research participants, programs that were done. And what we found is something that really aligns with my understanding of philosophy and how to help clients. When you are trying to make a difficult decision, and your values are, you kind of have to make a trade-off, whether it's this value to act on or this value to act on, but they're both your values and they both matter to you. When you are having to make a decision in a very high demand, high impact situation, you are going to be experiencing both immediate regret and anticipated regret. So now you've got double stress on you on top of the difficulty of making the decision. And what this is doing is it's creating what's called a identity incoherence, right? We're like, in order for me to be true to myself, I have to do this, but in order to be true to myself, I have to do this, and I can't do both. And you can see how this is going to start creating an identity crisis, an existential crisis. What am I supposed to do? Both are important. It's very destabilizing. It creates a lot of regret and guilt, both immediate and anticipated, in the person who is in this situation. So large surveys, clinical samples, lab experiments, they're all finding that when you're having to choose between conflicting values, it provokes stress, anxiety, guilt and regret, and an identity threat. Peer-reviewed studies underscore the consistent emotional toll of conflicting values in decision making, especially when there's a lot on the line. And these are big, big life decisions you're trying to make. So, but let's look at patterns that we have, right? So if I'm going to say, maybe self-betrayal doesn't exist, but I wanted to also lean into, well, what would be self-betrayal? What does drive some of our choices? Well, we know that attachment and bonding. So attachment can go back to earlier life experiences. So this could be attachment styles overall in your life, but then this could also be the unique attachment style that you have with your partner. One thing I always want to point out to people when they start talking about attachment styles is that you can have a very safe attachment style with somebody who is very safe and trustworthy. And then in other areas of your life, come across as somebody who has like an anxious attachment style or an avoidant attachment style. So don't cling too tightly to the idea of attachment styles as just being only one. You probably will experience yourself having different attachment patterns in different circumstances. But what we want to look at is particularly relationships that are intimate relationships, because we're talking about an intimate betrayal. Another thing that has to do with the attachment is that you were deeply bonded with your partner, the partner who cheated. So your attachment style and the bonding, which is very healthy, when you are in a safe, intimate relationship, bonding is the point of it. And so trusting your partner, being able to if something seems kind of weird, you're going to tell yourself, well, I'm sure there's a logical explanation for that. I trust my partner. My partner wouldn't do anything, right? And so that's a sign of a good, loving, trusting, secure attachment and a deep bond with somebody. And so those are healthy patterns. Um, then once you find out, you may have hope that things will work out, hope that your partner will be able to realize what got them into this situation, how they could do what they did, how to keep it from happening again. And you're also looking at the fact that you have a significant investment in this partner and in this relationship. You might have kids together. You might be running a business together. You may be um, stepping into retirement together. There's so much investment that you have put into this relationship. And so hoping for a good outcome and not wanting to just cut your losses. These are all values. These are values. Um, Wanting to meet the needs of family members. Maybe you have kids, teenagers, maybe an elderly parent. All of these things are important values. And different values will be different for different people, but certain cultures even will place a very high value on family members being just as important to consider in your decision making as your marriage partner. Um, there's so much that goes into wanting to meet the needs of family members. And then on top of that, other personal values you have, and then perceptions about how life is supposed to work, perceptions about who you are and what you're capable of, perceptions about other people and what other people are capable of, right? So all of these things are going to drive our patterns of our decision making, particularly in regards to intimate relationships. So, what if a more helpful, updated truth sounded like this? I couldn't have known the signs. I couldn't have known. I've never been in this situation before. How would I know that? I didn't even know I needed to set boundaries around this. Doesn't everybody use social media? Why would I need to, why would I need boundaries around social media? Um, I believe my partner, and my partner chose to abuse my trust. That's not on me. My partner chose how they responded to the trust that I gave them. Um, I was not the cause of my partner's harmful choices. I couldn't have stopped it from happening. I was faithful. I was faithful. Do you hear the dignity in that? I was faithful. I am looking for safety. I know that what I'm doing is because I need safety and I want that for myself. And I have real needs and real concerns. And when I am sharing a need or a concern, that doesn't mean I'm just in some kind of a trauma response. My needs and my concerns are real and rational, right? That is so important. So instead of saying who is the common denominator, we could say, what is the common denominator? Well, I have my thoughts about myself, and my partner has thoughts about me. Now, this piece here, I'm going to do more of a deep dive into on part two, but I want to introduce the idea that our thoughts, our beliefs, our assumptions are major driving factors in what we tell ourselves and how we behave or choices that we make based on the thoughts that we have, the things that we're telling ourselves. Okay. So I'm not going to go too deep on this one at this time, but in a couple weeks when we do this again, I'm going to really deep dive into this with everybody. So it's you. You're the problem, right? If you are thinking this is self-betrayal, I betrayed myself, well, consider this. The addict partner has been telling themselves that you are the problem, that you are to blame for their cheating. It's in their best interest for you to believe that you have been betraying yourself. And it sounds like this. If you hadn't neglected yourself or me or our relationship, I wouldn't have cheated. So you can see how maybe we want to talk a little bit about this idea or this concept of self-betrayal and challenge it a little bit. Research shows, Tammy and I know this very well, cheating is not motivated by the factors going on around you. It is motivated by internal factors. Only the cheater is responsible for their choices. They could have chosen to ask for a divorce. They could have told you what they were thinking about doing and let you decide if you want to stay in the relationship. They could have said, hey, let's get couples counseling. They could have gone out and shot some hoops with some friends instead. Like there are so many things that someone can do instead of cheating. It doesn't matter what happened to them in childhood. It it's important for us to understand so that we can take that into consideration for treatment and learning how to empower themselves to make better choices. But not everybody who has these childhoods cheat on their partners, right? So it's not causal. So it's really important to understand it is not outside circumstances that lead to cheating, it is internal factors. And that's where the change has to happen, which means the betrayed partner is off the hook. So maybe it's not self-betrayal. Making choices that align with your values is self-respect. You are faithful. You are loyal. You want to find a way to support. You value trust and honesty. You're trying to do what's best for your family. You're acting with caution. You're trying to not be impulsive. Of course, emotions take over from time to time, but you are trying your best to not be bothered by this to the point that reactions happen. Like nobody wants to be reactive. Nobody wants to be impulsive when they're in pain. And then as a betrayed partner, trying to take calculated risks on whether or not to stay and not just blindly trust. And I want to plug something real quick. This idea of calculated risks. At my website on afterbetrayal.org, there's a section for articles. In that section, I have put something that I have partnered with Melissa from Weetong Glen. We have written an article called Calculated Risks, and that will help you kind of go through and guide your decision making on how do I know when it's safe to stay and what do I need in order to stay in this relationship. Um, don't try to convince yourself to just start blindly trusting again just because you've decided you want to stay in a relationship. That is not how it works. There are very important things that have to come first, and there are very important strategies that your partner needs to use in order to earn your trust. So on afterbetrayal.org, in the article section is where you can find the calculated risks. Okay, so now the question is, what do you want to tell yourself? The reality is that you made decisions with the information that you had, and you are still doing your best to make the right decisions for you. That is why you are watching this webinar. That is why you are here. You are looking for the next right steps. And that means while you can't control others' choices, you can choose what your own next steps are. Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better. We are here to learn how to know better. And self-respecting choices are not what have hurt you. It's thinking that you self-betrayed. Thinking that you self-betrayed, and therefore thinking that you can't trust yourself. That will hurt you. If you are going to stay in this relationship, even if you're not going to stay in this relationship, you have to rebuild your trust in yourself because that's how you're making decisions. And if you don't trust yourself, you're constantly going to be afraid of everything. So let's pause the idea of self-betrayal and start thinking about the ways that you self-respected. Instead of thinking, if I let this happen, how can I trust myself now, right? Maybe instead we say something like, I've learned from this and I will take action if it happens again. It will be difficult, but I can handle it, right? So my invitation to you right now is to choose one small thing, one thought that you can practice to help you remember that you self-respected when you thought you self-betrayed. Does that make sense? That's one little thing, one action that you can take from our webinar today. Remember, bacteria and germs had not been discovered yet, just not long ago, okay? So here's I've got a quote. Just today, I was working with a male betrayed partner here in my office, and he worked through this whole idea where for the last 2 years, he has been paralyzed by thinking that there was something terribly wrong with him. He, over and over again, what is wrong with me that I've stayed? What is wrong with me that I let this happen? All of these types of experiences. And we were talking about it today, and I asked him, based on the work that we've done around this identity just in the last couple of weeks, is there anything that he would like to share with those of you? Because today he said, so much weight has been lifted, and I no longer hate myself when I look in the mirror. And that was huge for him to get to that point. So today, what he said, and he gave me permission to share this with you, he said, every situation in life is unique. It can help to reassess your standards and your beliefs when things happen. Don't force yourself to keep one that no longer serves you. Wide nets catch a bunch of stuff that may not belong there. I thought that was such a great metaphor or analogy for this idea of updating our beliefs. Just because we caught something in our net doesn't mean it belongs there. Shout out to that client. Thank you. I know you'll be watching this. All right. So when we do part two, we're going to be talking about our legacy and our thoughts and our stories and how all of those are important for healing ourselves after betrayal. There's a couple of resources I want to share. So I've started a new work group at Seeking Integrity. This is an 8-week work group. We no longer have a part one and a part two for betrayed partners for me. I wanted to try to get everything into 8 weeks, and I've titled the group Restoring Sanity After Betrayal. And we're going to be starting another one this summer in just about a month and a half. So go register for that there. We do talk about this idea of self-betrayal. We talk about identity. We talk about setting boundaries. It's a really thorough work group. And I would love for you to join me there. It's a small group, and I'm here with you for 8 weeks straight, an hour and a half each week. So really a wonderful resource and very, very affordable. The other resource that I wanted to share that I've been being very intentional lately is litpath.org. And this is a place where you can find scholarships if you have been wanting to utilize a certified sex addiction therapist. Um, they have programs to help supplement the cost of those. So go check out litpath.org, and they've got a conference coming up this summer that's going to be fantastic, and that's going to be in Tennessee. Couple of other resources. The other one was I wanted to make sure you knew about the article on After Betrayal. And then there is a new resource that I made on, this is literally, it just went live 2 hours ago. And I've put it on the website. It's called The Void. And if you are familiar with philosophy, you'll understand why I named it this. It's almost humorous, but basically what this is a page or a site where it's got an empty area where you can just type in and do a thought dump. And then when you hit submit, it just goes out into the void. No one's going to read it. Sometimes you just need to get things off of your chest so that you can move on. Sometimes you have these really unhelpful thoughts and you don't want to have those unhelpful thoughts. And if you have somewhere that you can go and you can just type it in and hit submit and it just goes out into a void, it literally will never affect you. No one will ever see it or read it. It is just a very special space where you can go to release things that no longer serve you. So that is on afterbetrayal.org. I'm super excited. I've had a lot of people help me figure out the technical way to create a resource like this. So go check that out. And then there's going to be a workshop. This is going to be on May 3rd, and that is a Sunday. And it is a self-identity makeover workshop. And you'll also be able to find out more information on that at the afterbetrayal.org site. And that is also a new resource that I'm offering. I'll offer it probably once or twice a year. But it's going to be something where we can really dive into some of these identities and what's helping us, what's serving us, and what's no longer serving us. And it's just a good starter for some of this important work. This Sunday, the price will go up. The price is going to double for the registration. Right now, it's half price, and the early bird registration ends this Sunday at midnight. So I wanted to kind of put a quick plug in there for that so that you don't miss that chance.
That's
Okay,
online.
Tammy. Hmm?
That will be online on.
Yes, it'll be on
It's
Zoom.
virtual. Okay, good. I
Yep,
just
it's
wanted, yeah,
virtual.
okay. So anybody can participate. That's my point. So
Yes.
yes, okay, okay. So I have to start. We've got questions, but I have to start. My granddaughter is was visiting a college. She's accepted there, and we went and the most fascinating table to me was the philosophy one. I spent a lot of time. All your answers are questioned, and I was like, oh, that's me. All your like, I'm constantly so, and I was like, oh, this is why we get along so well, and why you are an early adapter of things. And I'm, yes, always looking for, well, that's mostly helpful, but not, oh, is there more we can do? So I love that. The, uh, I wanted to, when you were talking about Maya Angelou, um, like I always say, how would you ever know? Like you never get, and year whatever of our relationship, all of a sudden we're gonna have this, and we're gonna, intuitively know how to handle all of those things because, that's just we all have that knowledge. So it's all, it is, it's such a different framework, and I share with partners too. Your brain works different than, and you use cheater, and I will differentiate between cheater and addict. And
Yes,
there is
good.
a difference. So
Yes.
but we're not able to think about you when we're doing those things. We are very focused on us, and all of those reasons are reasons. They're not justification. That does not minimize the responsibility for us. I love the void. Like I've had partners, like they wanted to send nasty grams to their betraying partner, and they also knew that it was not going to be helpful. And I was like, just email them to me, put in the subject, venting. I won't read them, but you'll have sent it, and it won't cause the, like if you choose to send it to the person later. So I love that you've created a space where, it can go and it won't be seen again. But yes, get it out of the brain. So that's great. Okay. So we've got questions. The first one, and you should be able to see these if you hit Q&A at the bottom of your screen.
Okay.
Why is it easier to see lying in other people's relationships, but not our own? That's a great question.
Ooh, I think, and Tammy, I would love to hear your thoughts on this too. The first thing that comes up for me is those ideas about our bonding, our attachment. We rely on people who we are in an intimate relationship with, whether it's a business partner or a child or a parent or a sibling, like people who we have deep, meaningful relationships with. We have those relationships because we need to be able to trust people. And so if you're in a relationship with somebody, that's important that you are able to say, I'm sure there's a perfectly good explanation for this. That is what trust looks like. And instead of constantly questioning everything, you can't live life that way. We need to have people who have our backs and who we can trust and who know have our backs as well.
And I'm with you on that. And and some of the stuff is so ridiculous that the, betraying, partner, says, but you trust this person. Like you're in a relationship, and for some, it's decades long, well, oh, okay. You can sort of make sense that, well, it's okay. And that is why it's so important, I think, to have, your tribe of people that you can go, this is what they said. Cause, they also will be able to hear easier what's in your relationship probably than in theirs initially. This is one of those where, yeah, this is not about you. This is about, the other person, and even often, I mean, literally people have been confronted with pictures of like this, and oh, no, no. And you can spin a yarn that is, I mean, it's fantastical. And, but the partner will go, oh, I want to believe my partner, my spouse, like this is my committed relationship. And, it's that Pandora's box of like, oh, if I can't believe this, then what else? And so it's, I'm going, of course, of
Yeah.
course.
Yep.
Okay. The next one is a comment. In my opinion, the cheaters have betrayed themselves. I rarely meet a cheater who wants to end their relationship.
Yeah. Oh, I would absolutely agree with this. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be an addict. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to ruin my family's lives, right? Nobody wants that. And now these people, whether you are a one-time cheater or an addict, you're looking at yourself going, I never wanted this for my life. This isn't what I thought my life would be. And who am I now? If I'm capable of that, am I a monster? Right? And so it can create all kinds of identity issues that must be addressed.
And as the person here who I never wanted to grow up to be an addict, and I did. And guess what? That was one of those things, and I hear it often in the 12 step rooms of I'm a grateful, addict in recovery. And because it gave us those tools, like I was just talking about a little bit ago, we didn't have the tools to do life. And so recovery, if we're willing to do the work, gives us those tools. We don't have to continue those problematic behaviors if we're willing to do the work. Not
That's right.
everyone is, and that's part of the discernment for partners of understanding what the betraying partner is doing and willing to do to heal. So
Mhm.
next one, betrayed partner here. I feel like growing up in an alcoholic family, I am very absolute in my thinking and very black and white. Either my partner is all bad or I am, like I seesaw. So I cycle between fight, resentment, or shame, internal self blame. How do I get more balanced?
Oh, I love this question. Okay, you are hitting the philosophy piece of this right on the head. You cannot go through life saying it's either nighttime or daytime. You have sunrise, you have sunset, you have dawn, you have twilight. There is so much about life that is not all or nothing. And when we go through life with that rigid kind of thinking that either something is good or bad, either I'm good or I'm bad, or my partner is good or my partner is bad, or if my partner is bad, then I'm good, or if I'm good, then my partner is bad. You can see what that does is that limits your options down to only yes or no, stay or leave, right? And regardless of what that looks like, that is a massive obstacle that both the addicts and the betrayed partners run into when they're getting tripped up, when they're like, I don't understand why this isn't working. It usually comes back to somebody thinking it's all this or it's nothing. And that's just not how life works.
Yeah, and I have my kintsugi. I say this with a
Yeah.
terrible thick Midwest accent, but like I work really hard at not using bad or good, except for behaviors. Like these are, but the person is not bad or good. I use broken, but the kintsugi art is the Japanese art of using the gold glue and repairing things. So out of that brokenness, which is what I see it as, there can be beauty and great art and restoration and healing. And I tended used to be a very black and white, I was very black and white, but I was missing all of the colors that were in between. And so what Angela was talking about is, my favorite times of the day are sunrise. I'm out early a lot, and sunset because the light is just spectacular at that time of the day. I live in Arizona. Sunrise is lovely. Noon is little, a little bright. And but understanding that there are nuances. I'm kind of because he said, "What can I do?" I'm like, "What would it be like for you to go like there's more like and just be willing to look, at some of those other things. It isn't all or nothing." One more thing I found in my early recovery, talk about black and white thinking, it was always in nevers. And I had to stop using, I try not to use those absolutes. There's a few things that it absolutely applies to, but otherwise, like I try not to do like you always or you never. Like I work really hard at not doing that because it's like rarely is it that absolute. So, do you mostly? Do you sometimes? Sure. Or do
Mhm.
I?
Mhm.
But those absolutes, were damaging to me. And so the invitation for you would be to explore, you know, what is more of the spectrum of all of the beautiful light that could be available if you're in all those colors that, Dr. Rob talks about recovery as, technicolor, when we're in the pales and grays, so I would invite you to explore the technicolor. If you aren't working with a qualified professional, that may be something to really dig in with them of going, you know, but you all already know too that you have history. So some inner child work for betrayed partners, Dr. Eddie's book, the attachment wounds, like wow, that's coming up, as well for betrayed partners with Troy Love. So lots of resources. I'll put that in the chat as well. I blame my partner because I don't believe I can handle life alone or be self-supporting financially or emotionally. How to build self-trust?
Yeah, so self-trust is sometimes built incrementally. Just like when your partner lies to you, that self-trust doesn't come back immediately just because they want you to trust them. So when you are building self-trust, it starts with an identity, right? Which is why I'm going to be doing that identity, um, sort of a makeover workshop. And I want to create almost like a a map or a guide, like a path that you can follow that will help you to stop and say, okay, what is the assumptions that I have about myself right now that I need to challenge or I need to update because it's no longer serving me. So the starting piece is what are your assumptions about yourself? And then what are your assumptions about the world, right? I'm going to guide everybody down the path that's used in philosophy for challenging assumptions and then adjusting your behaviors and choices based on values and assumptions that you have about how life works. So it's not terribly complicated. It's challenging though. It's difficult work because to try to open your perception that such a thing as germs and bacteria exists, right? Like when that has never been proven before. It's a very difficult thing to do. And so challenging our perceptions about the world and ourselves is something that takes intentionality, and you've got to be willing to do that to be open to let new information in. And so, if you're battling with cynicism, I've got some webinars that I did with Seeking Integrity on cynicism and resentment and releasing all of that. And yeah, these are all small ways that you start over and start rebuilding. But it truly the foundation of it is what are some of the assumptions and beliefs that you have about yourself? Which of those are no longer serving you, and what would you rather them be? And then you set out to prove that your new assumptions are real because you can just tell yourself, okay, I can handle it, but you're not going to believe it just because you're telling yourself that. And so there's little tiny tasks that you would do that would show you, prove to yourself experientially that you have your own back.
Yeah, I love that. And also I put the self-identity makeover, I found the link for it. So I put that in the chat as well. But I was also thinking, I know blame happens, but blame doesn't really change anything, And so, Dr. Eddie did a webinar at one point and he talked about, he quoted Dr. Gabor Mate that said, what has happened, you can't make unhappen. I share that often because whatever has happened has happened. Here's where you are now. So choosing, okay, that's the reality, and here's where I am now, and what am I going to choose to do to move forward, on a different path, because otherwise, if I'm constantly looking in the rear view mirror of like, oh, that, all of that happened, and that other person is at fault, and yeah, maybe probably, but here's the reality of where I am now and what am I going to choose to do so I'm not losing more time. We have a finite period of time on this planet.
Mhm.
So how do we wish to choose to use it?
Yep.
And it has happened to you as a betrayed partner. Yes, I heard the buzz of like, I never asked for any. I know you did not.
So
And here's
true.
where you are. So betrayed partner, I feel like I wasted my whole life depending on someone who was not capable of meeting my needs. I feel like a fool when self abandoned because I was terrified of being alone. How do I not camp in this place of self loathing and hopelessness? I have no confidence in my judgment, and my abandonment issues and existential dread is debilitating.
Yeah, absolutely. Existential dread and existential crisis. Debilitating is such a good word for it. Like all of a sudden, everything feels so unstable. You don't know what is solid ground to walk on. And you can experience this even if you don't have somebody who betrays you, right? All of a sudden, someone who you love dies, and it was very sudden, and maybe it was a car accident, very unexpected. It can create the same effect. So when you are trying to get back to a place of stability, it comes back to easing into what are some assumptions that you want to have about life and about how things work. What will support you in that? What's going to be helpful? Join that work group if this is what you are feeling, that existential dread and things are debilitating. That self-identity workshop, we are going to help you figure out what those assumptions are and what assumptions would be more helpful for you without abandoning your values. How can you lean into your values? And pro tip, part of it is the idea that your values, it's not black and white, it's not all or nothing, it's not always or never. You can have values that apply more in some situations than in others, right? And that's where we get tripped up. And then we think our values are at conflict when reality, it's just there's a different value that's more appropriate for the situation. We'll get into that in part two. But yeah, join us for the part two and do that workshop. It's only a 1 hour workshop, so it's not going to be a huge time commitment, and you're going to have a path.
And I just put, somebody asked about the article for the staying as a calculated risk. I just put the link in the chat as well. So betraying partner question. How can I best support my betrayed partner as they struggle with this issue?
Yeah. Okay. So first, ask your betrayed partner what would be helpful for you. Because I could give you all kinds of ideas and tips and strategies. There's a lot of information out there on empathy and all this, but I'm finding that a lot of betrayed partners are going, I'm tired of all this empathy stuff. I want responsibility and accountability, and that's the best thing that they can give me. So your betrayed partner has their own unique needs, their own unique desires, their own unique things that they want for themselves. And the best thing you can do is take time to check in with them and ask them. You can let them know, here are the things that I did for you this week or the last 24 hours. Are they on track to actually do any good? Is it actually helpful, the things that I'm doing? Is there anything that I could do that would be more helpful? If they don't know, that's okay. At least you're showing them, hey, I want to help you, and I may not know the best way, and you may not know the best way, but I'm committed to being here and helping you. So if anything comes up, let me know, and I'm going to keep trying. Um, Sign your partner up for that workshop. That'll give her a chance, her or him, that chance to kind of think through, what is it that I need? What are my values? Um, yeah,
And I'm going, be careful because telling your partner what they need to do, like it
exactly.
is challenging, But to Angela's point, yeah, yes, ask. It's a great,
Mhm.
like, I find so many people don't ask the question. Like, I'm trying to do all these things and trying to do it, like, is this right? So ask, is this helpful?
Mhm.
And the biggest thing is, what are you doing to make sure that you're on a path so that you aren't going to, be likely to do this again, because I have lots of betraying partners that go, well, I need to help her. I need to help her. And I'm going, but you're not doing anything for yourself that will show that you are on a path that won't, caused this to happen again in a matter of time. So you really solidifying your foundation for recovery if you're an addict, or looking at why did I choose to cheat? Looking at those issues, making sure you've got a good foundation. I did put the link for the work groups. We have Sex Addiction 101 or Porn Addiction 101 or Out of the Doghouse for Men who've been caught cheating. That's the next level. They're in order. And then healthy attachments and inner child and why men struggle, all of those, but get that solid foundation. The more foundation you have, the more likely a partner is to see, oh, this person is actually doing the work. This gives me, some breadcrumbs of trust and hope. So that would be, make sure you're doing the actions, not words. So, okay. Is there a difference between a love affair and an addiction affair? What is the difference between a cheater and an addict? We've done webinars on this whole topic, but go ahead and touch on it.
Well, yeah, just real briefly, and well, I I know that we have like 4 minutes left.
Yes.
Let's just refer to other webinars. There's so much information that we already have, so many ways that we've answered that question.
Yes. And that like we've done whole webinars on that.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
um, okay. And even, yeah. So email tami@seekingintegrity.com and I'll point you towards things. Okay. How can an addict cheater convince themselves that they can keep their behavior going? What's going on? How can you not see the devastation? Again, we've done like that's all part of the addiction thing. And so, with the limited time, I would invite you to lean into resources. We talk about, like, I was actually reading Sex Addiction 101 snippets from that book about, because a partner was really struggling with, like, how could they do this? And like I read, and they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yes. So Sex Addiction 101, there's podcasts on it. There's a book. You will see the patterns in there. Okay. So betrayed partner here, self-betrayal and regret for me was accepting so little engagement in my marriage for 20 years and not believing that I deserved more. He was cheating for much of the time, so not present in the family or marriage. How can I conceptualize my part in this differently?
Yeah, right. So, um, one of the very first slides I put on there, the very first a sort of aspect of our experience is we're thinking to ourselves before we ever find out about the infidelity, right? Whether it's just a cheating or a full-blown addiction. Um, Life is hard and relationships are hard. Right. And so you're going through life with the assumption that how things are is as good as it gets. Right. So you had outdated assumptions about how things worked. That is not a betrayal, a self-betrayal. That is a lack of information. You are going through life with an outdated perception of what's possible. Now you know better. Now you can do better. Now you can say, wait, I want a relationship that has more emotional availability in it. And I want a relationship where we talk about things. And I can want that for myself because it's not unreasonable to expect that. That's a reality. That's a reasonable expectation for a healthy relationship. Updating our understandings and our assumptions about how life works is how you conceptualize your part in this differently.
I have a pattern of staying in relationships longer than I should, and it's rooted in control, trying to prevent regret. I'm still with my cheating, addicted husband, and with the trauma of the betrayal. I'm having an even harder time in this case to determine what is best for me. I still hold on to hope, but it does feel like self-betrayal to some extent as his toxic behavior continues. Any advice for me to gain clarity?
Yeah, so I would encourage you to start by writing down all of the values that are driving your decisions. And then look at your values and say, okay, obviously, in this situation, I value supporting my partner through it. I value holding on to hope because that's an important aspect. Not everybody can hold on to hope. That's something I value in life is holding hope. Um, a value of not looking back on life with regrets. That's a value that I'm hearing in this share. So I think that there's a number of values, and you're trying to hold all of them equally in a situation where you can't do that. And so, which value is going to come out on top? And when you're looking at it as I'm choosing this value over this value, I'm respecting myself by choosing this value, even while I can't choose both values at the same time. It's an act of self-respect.
Yeah, uh, making a decision, and I won't get this right, but it's like a decision is you're cutting. If you make a decision, which is why lots of addicts don't, like want to straddle the fence. But if you're making a decision, you're choosing one over the other. It's going back to the trolley tracks. Like as soon as you get to the point where you're choosing one or the, and even in that, if I don't do anything, something's going to happen. And so it isn't that I don't want to choose, and we don't, I don't want to make that decision, one or five, it's still lives, but on the other hand, if I don't do anything, the track is running towards the five, and so I've made a choice by not making a decision. So that, it's challenging. I did a webinar because I found it fascinating, probably going to this philosophy stuff of loss aversion, because I kept hearing that topic come up, and lots of, like, this is not just about addiction, but many of us choose, the short-term comfort, like, this is what I know, and I'm going to choose this, even though the longer, and there would be steps and uncomfortable, but it's so much better, like, exponentially better. But I can't see that, I'm hanging on to, this is what I know, so check out that webinar if you'd like to from that standpoint too. But you know and give yourself some grace of, like, this is really hard, and whatever you choose. I'll throw one more in there, in a second too, because Debbie McCrae did grief and loss, and I think, there's grief in the loss of the marriage you hoped for, the relationship you thought you had, the person you thought you were with, all of those things. And there's loss, and regardless whether you stay or to go, which I did put that series in there, there's still choices and loss and grief. So last question, any tips on self amends?
Yeah. So self-amends um, would be assuming that you betrayed yourself. So the idea of self-amends, I think, is um, what's emerging for me as a healthy approach to self-compassion would be talking to the inner child, writing letters to the inner child, taking yourself out, like you're taking your inner child out with you, to a place that helps to update some of your assumptions about the world and assumptions about yourself. Find ways to prove to yourself how good and wonderful you are. And that's not something that comes easily for most of us. So that is probably one of the more difficult but really important ways to make some of those amends.
And I'm going to invite this, working with a professional on this, could be really useful as well, because it's usually rooted, way back, we're talking about inner child and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Personally done this work, being able to support that, little girl that was doing the best she could, and that's a lot of it is the lens at which, like, I was doing the best I could. I like your quote with Maya Angelou. It's, we're doing the best we can given the information that we have. And now here's where we are, and how can we move forward in a different way? So
Yeah.
the negative self-talk is really powerful. And so, and Troy Love talks about this a lot, and the core beliefs, and it goes down to, who do we believe we are? And there's a lot of false beliefs when there's a lot of pain like this. And so, can we look at, I am worthy of love. I am trying to be the best person I possibly can. Do I do it perfectly? Heck no. All of those things, so when those voices come up, and I know where they come from,
Yeah.
I can interrupt those. And that's where it starts is, like, if I can interrupt that thought, then I can look at it and go, what really is the reality of that? So
Yeah. Yep.
can't wait for part two. Join us then. This will be posted. I'll see if I can get this posted yet today. So, and all of these resources, reach out after betrayal.org. You can reach out to Angela there,
Mhm.
or TAMI at seekingintegrity.com if it's something about seeking integrity. Thank you
Okay.
so much. Can't
Yeah.
wait.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Bye.